Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security here in Lusaka, Zambia. My name is Yvonne Kanenga Nawila, your usual moderator on this Productivity Z360 Expert Talk. This program is aired every month, the first week of a Tuesday, and sometimes flexible to cater for the availability of our expert that we are featuring for that month. This is the second edition of the Productivity Z360 Talk, and we are featuring the Labor Commissioner of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. In fact, the Zambian Labor Commissioner under the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Mr. Givens Muntengwa, who we are proud to have hosted this morning despite his busy schedule of ensuring a secure, safe, and protected labor force on the labor market. This morning, we are discussing the role of labor legislation in promoting productivity and enterprise sustainability. The first edition featured His Excellency the Ambassador, Dr. Chibamba Kanyama, who spoke on the role of the 24-hour economy and also leveraging on best practices globally. It was a very good discussion and a lot of questions came forth, and people were wondering how we can enhance our labor administration and management and the labor market in particular, so we can provide for such kind of changes on the labor market. There are many issues that the labor market is confronted with, and especially when it comes to provision of decent work. The Ministry of Labor and Social Security is responsible for promoting a conducive labor market. The vision of the ministry is to ensure we have a labor force that is productive and anchored on decent work for all. And so the topic this morning aligns with the aspiration of the Ministry of Labor in ensuring that we provide protection, social security, productivity, occupational safety, and health that are very key in ensuring enterprise sustainability and productivity. And so to start this discussion, allow me to give you a brief introduction of what the National Productivity Development Department has been doing in ensuring that we bring forth such kind of discussions to ensure we raise awareness on issues relating to productivity. The National Productivity Development Department has a responsibility to promote productivity in all sectors of the economy, to enhance economic growth as well as improve the standard of living of the people. We stand on the principle that enhancing worker productivity is one of the key of ensuring that a nation prospers. Previously, in 2023, when this program was launched, the Minister of Labor and Social Security, Honorable Brenda Mwika Tambatamba, MP, did provide us with a background on how Zambia fares in terms of productivity. As we see it here, we start on an average productivity growth of 0.2, negative 0.2, which is a decline compared to other nations in the region. In terms of the International Labour Organization statistics, Zambia sits at position number 155 out of 189 countries, registering productivity or labor productivity of 4.55 international dollars per hour of work. This is low productivity, as you can see, compared to the 9.18 average of the SADC region. And so because of that, the National Productivity Development Department has been bringing different programs to ensure we promote and raise awareness on the need for us to raise productivity levels. The National Productivity Policy was launched in 2021, and since then, we've been trying to reach different enterprise communities as well as nations through various media to ensure we raise this awareness on productivity. Now, with that background, allow me to give you an introduction of our able speaker this morning, who is no other than our Labour Commissioner, Mr. Givens Muntengwa. In terms of his work profile, Mr. Muntengwa joined government on 2nd January 1996 in accounts as account assistant in the Ministry of Finance and seconded to Ministry of Health. In December 1998, he was transferred to the Ministry of Finance, where he worked as a resource person in conducting newly employed accountants in payroll management. He was involved in the preparation of the national budget for the Republic and also preparation of the financial report for the Republic of Zambia. He's worked in the Ministry of Education, where he changed professions and studied law and was admitted to the bar. He was later transferred to Ministry of Justice, where he worked as a drafter of the law and rose to the position of Deputy Chief Parliamentarian Counsel, which is at the level of Assistant Director. At the Ministry of Justice, he sat in the parliamentary committees as an expert witness to guide on the ratification of the various proposed bills. He sat on boards of statutory bodies and also represented the country at the UN General Assembly in the committees, among other international meetings. Mr. Muntengwa sat also as a drafter in the Zambezi River Authority Technical Drafting Committee and also the Tanzania-Zambia Railways Authority, TAZARA. He is currently Labour Commissioner for the Republic of Zambia, where he's been for the past 5 years. He holds a qualification in accounts law and legislative drafting. These and among others are the credentials of our expert we are featuring today, and we are glad that the Labour Commissioner has found time to come and discuss this subject with us this morning. Allow me to invite the Labour Commissioner on the stage as we begin this discussion. Good morning, Elsie.
Good morning, Yvonne. How are you doing this morning? Good morning, everyone who is tuned in, wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening, good night. Please, I all invite you to join in this important program. You are most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is indeed our pleasure to host you on this Productivity Day 360. And so today is not my show, Labour Commissioner. Today is your show. I will invite you to lead the discussion on how labor legislation can promote enterprise sustainability and indeed productivity. So generally, we are looking at how do we balance worker protection and enterprise productivity. How do we support, or how does the law support both employees' rights as well as the employers' rights, so we can keep our businesses competitive? We've got a lot of issues that sit under this subject, Labour Commissioner, but I will give you a time to offload the subject matter with every information that you want the viewers to listen to. So whoever has joined us, there's a chat box. You can type your question, you can type your contribution, and Labour Commissioner and I will be available to ensure that your question is responded to. So I will go off stage and allow the Labour Commissioner to speak to us and address us on this very important subject. Stay tuned and please share the link and invite as many as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, once more. And everyone who is tuned in is welcome. Like you have already stated in your introductory remarks, decent work agenda is fundamental in terms of issues relating to labor. And I would like to start from that point, that decent agenda in terms of the labor market is divided into 4 pillars. And those fundamental pillars relate to uh, employees' rights at places of work, which means that employees have the liberty to organize in terms of union activities, and those union activities bring to the table an interface with the employer so that the employees are able to bring out their feelings, to bring out their ideas, exchange them with the employer, negotiate for the good terms and conditions of service. And when they do that, then employees are motivated so that when we are talking about productivity, that remuneration will be equated to what they put in. So briefly, that is about employees' rights, which is one of the pillars of the decent work agenda. We are also talking about the creation of jobs, or job creation, if you like, employment opportunities. So these employment opportunities do not just drop like manna from heaven. It simply means that the employers have to have some form of incentives also from the legal framework. That legal framework can be traced from the Constitution of Zambia, where Ministry of Finance on each year has to present a national budget, and that national budget will make pronouncements on expected estimates of revenue and expenditure, where the taxes will be collected, and to some extent, the Minister of Finance will also make pronouncements on tax reliefs and all that, which are meant to grow the industry, which are meant to boost production, which are meant to ensure that employers break even. So that aspect, the employment, creation of employment, is also fundamental. Then we are talking of social dialogue. The government must reach out to the social partners being the workers, the social partners being the employers. So currently, our legislation, since we are talking about legislation, when you look at Section 79 of the Industrial and Labor Relations Act, it establishes what is known as the Tripartite Consultative Labor Council. This council by law is supposed to meet at least twice every year, meaning to say, at the barest minimum, these tripartite partners, who are the government, represented by the chairperson, Minister of Labor and Social Security, and other 6 ministries, because the membership is 7 government, 7 employers, 7 representatives of workers. So 21 in total. However, the number is not restricted depending on how the social partners agree. So every year they have to meet at least twice. But as you can see, for the past 3 years or so, 4 years or so, this tripartite consultative labor council has been meeting for more than twice. Why? Because all labor matters must be channeled through the platform of tripartism to harmonize the different ideologies, to bring to the table the different ideas from the workers, from the angle of workers. What are they seeing that ought to subsist in the labor market? We also have to tap a wisdom from the employers, and government also has to bring to the table what it considers to be the aspirations of the people of Zambia, the aspirations of the workers. So that tripartite consultative labor council is a very important aspect insofar as the regulation of the labor sector is concerned. You then have social dialogue within that aspect. So you must engage, you reach out, and this social dialogue will then tell you, for example, which sector must be regulated by minimum wages and conditions of employment, of which in Zambia, when you talk of that pieces of legislation or that piece of legislation, you are looking at the domestic workers. So we have a minimum wage for the domestic worker so that you spell out the starting point so that no one is discriminated within the classes of domestic workers. So we have the minimum wages and conditions of employment. We also have minimum wages which go through this platform of the tripartite, the shop workers. Those people who work in shops must be given that decent wage. They must be given decent jobs. So to attain that aspiration, you then have to have the minimum wages for that sector. You also have minimum wages for general workers. So generally, you have workers who work in industries, you have workers who work all over the country in different sectors who might not be specifically provided for under the other minimum wages. So these workers must be captured under the general wages pronounced under the general order. So in other words, the Tripartite Consultative Labor Council gets recommendations from the Labor Advisory Committee, which again is constituted by law under the Employment Code Act, which reaches out to the players in the market who make submissions on the quantum, on the proposed wages, the proposed allowances or incentives within the scope of that market. And then when they make those submissions, the Labor Advisory Council then submits to the minister, and the minister takes it to the Tripartite Consultative Labor Council, and by resolution, they will agree or make such adjustments as they consider necessary for the regulation of each sector. And then that proposed minimum wage or minimum wages will then be escalated to the Ministry of Justice for finalization and later sent back to the minister to append her signature to assent to that minimum wage, and then it will be published and it becomes law. So you can see that that is extremely important insofar as legislation is important. We can also talk about the truck drivers and bus drivers who equally are regulated through minimum wages. But I must be quick to mention here that those that are unionized, those that are freely engaged in free bargaining processes are not subject to regulation under the minimum wages and conditions of employment, because they can freely determine their wages, they can freely determine the allowances, they can freely determine other aspects that relate to employment. So in that regard, therefore, they cannot be gagged by these minimum wages. You cannot push the minimum wages down their throats. Rather, they have the independence to contract, the independence to bargain, the independence to agree between themselves as unions and employers. And what they agree, therefore, will have to be registered under Ministry of Labor after the minister approves. So the legal framework in Zambia, therefore, demands that when the employers and employees agree in what is known as a collective agreement, that collective agreement will not have legal effect until it is submitted for the approval of the minister, and then it shall have to be registered by the Labor Commissioner. After it's registered, it becomes part of the law so that no party, either the employer or the union, can depart from what has been agreed. So no one must depart, no one must disregard an approved and registered collective agreement simply because it is convenient for that party to do so. No, that is not allowed. That would be a breach. So, talking about our role in terms of ensuring that no party departs from what has been agreed, that's why now, in terms of legislation, in terms of making sure that employees are not demotivated, we then carry out inspections from time to time to ensure that, one, those that are regulated by minimum wages, they are paid according to what the minimum wages provide. So the incentives that the law seeks to provide must be adhered to. So we're talking of compliance levels. So that's why when you go to ILO, when you are sitting in those meetings, ILO is interested to see to it that the standards that they expect in each and every member state are adhered to. Inspections have to be carried out by labor inspections. By labor inspectors. So labor inspectors are looking out on areas that are provided by the law and how the employers are implementing what the law provides for. So that is about issues around social dialogue, issues around how government interfaces with the other social partners. The last pillar is the social protection. Under social protection, you're talking about pensions, you are talking about coverage of injury, you are talking about coverage of health issues of workers. So in Zambia, we have legislation, the National Health Insurance Act, which covers workers insofar as health aspects are concerned, and members will not pay out of pocket when they visit a health facility, but rather will be covered by the premiums that they are paying on a monthly basis, 1% employer, 1% employee. And when they are sick, they are covered to the extent of what the health insured package provides for. You also have the workers' compensation, if I may coin it that way in short, control board, which essentially covers workers in terms of injury, in terms of disablement, and their incentives, if I may loosely put it that way, which are given, or compensation, if you like, which is paid to those that find themselves within the brackets of that percentage of disablement, which triggers payment towards the employees who would have been affected by injury. You also have within the ministry the Department of Occupational Safety and Health. Now, this department ensures that all employers must safeguard employees' welfare in terms of safety and health. So what it means is this department has to inspect the vessels. It has to inspect the machinery. It has to inspect the buildings to see to it that these buildings do not pose a risk to the employees. So employees must work under an environment which guarantees safety and health conditions. And so when you're looking at the department, it looks at the machinery, the vessels, that aspect. And then we have the Occupational Safety and Health Institute. That one looks at the status, the condition of the employee. So employees, for example, that have to work underground in mines have to be checked. You have to look at their conditions. Do they have the chest that cannot, or rather that can withstand the attack by pneumoconiosis diseases, for example? Then they should be able to do the examinations and render a report whether the employee is fit to work underground or for whatever work that obtains to their appointment. So that is the social security space. And right now, government has embarked on social security reforms, pension reforms, if you like, where certain aspects have to be reviewed within the legal framework. The most pronounced aspect by workers, they always talk about payouts at the time they are retiring. And so those aspects will be looked at in light of what the international space provides for. So legislation, as you can see clearly, is fundamental in terms of bringing about productivity, because employees have to be incentivized. Employees have to be paid for the work done. And to ensure that employees have to be paid, that's why you have pieces of legislation like the Employment Code Act. The Employment Code Act captures aspects of overtime, aspects of equal pay for equal value of work, aspects of maternity leave, paternity leave, aspects relating to gratuity, aspects relating to severance pay, aspects relating to many other aspects, non-discrimination in any employment policy. The employer is expected not to discriminate any employee on the basis of race, origin, creed, what have you, color, you name it. So the Act in that regard, for example, states that employees who are doing the same work must not be paid differently because they are similarly circumstanced. They are giving the same services to the employer, so they must be paid equally. So this also emanates from our constitution, the Constitution of the Republic, which frowns upon discrimination. So without legal framework, you find that it will be difficult for the Office of the Labor Commissioner to make a follow-up on those employers who are incorrigible, employers who only want to do that which they feel they must do. So we cannot have that situation. It is therefore the more reason why you have legislation to ensure that the labor sector are given the same rules, regulations, and laws so that there is no discrimination. So the standard of measurement from our office is the law. When we go out, we don't have to become lawless also. We don't have to practice lawlessness where we become the law ourselves. No. The law has to be given to the sector. There must be that rather it has to be predictable at any given stage. The employers, the employees must know what is the law trying to cure, what mischief is there, how they must react. For example, in Zambia, as things stand, for an employment between 1 month, or from whatever weeks or days up to 3 months, or less than 6 months if you like, we must have record of service of employment. The employer must be able to capture the name of the employee and other particulars and the level of remuneration, so that when we go to inspect, we then have to cross-check against what the law provides in terms of the first schedule, oral contract of service, which we now have to ask from the employer, do you have this? What's the name of the employee? What's the type of employment? And all that. And that is provided for under Section 18. We then have a requirement under the same Employment Code Act where it provides that any employer who engages an employee for 6 months or more must and shall provide a contract in writing. And the same Section 22 provides that where the employer contravenes the provisions of this section, the employer shall be charged an administrative penalty. So this is of strict application. In other words, if you have employed an employee for 6 months or more, you must produce a contract in writing. If you fail to produce a contract in writing, then you can be charged up to the maximum of 200 penalty units. And the penalty unit is 40 ngwe. So if you do your maths, you'll find that in Zambian kwacha, the maximum you can pay is 80,000 kwacha. 80,000 kwacha. So that's why when we go out for inspections, to ensure that the employees are not denied their rights. Remember, we're talking about employee rights under one of the pillars of ILO. So now this is the operationalization. So if the employee is denied the right to know the quantum of remuneration in the contract, which is not there, then we have to charge you, because in the contract, you'll be telling the employee that the employee is expected to contribute to pension at 6%, and by extension, the employer is also supposed to contribute. You also then spell out that the employee will work for 8 hours. That is what is provided for in the Employment Code Act, and any time outside the 8 hours becomes overtime, and the employee shall be paid that overtime. So that now begins to bring to actualization the employee rights at a place of work. So if we find that this is not happening, we'll charge you. And when you look also at Section 7, Section 7 also frowns or prohibits casualization. Now, in simple terms, what is casualization? Casualization simply means that if you make an assessment, for example, if you go to a hotel or accommodation establishment and you find that those room attendants are engaged on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, you should then raise a red flag, because if rooms are not cleaned, if no one attends to those rooms, the hotel cannot operate. So when you take them out of the equation, can the hotel exist without them? Of course, the answer is no. So since the answer is no, it simply means that where this establishment is not offering permanent or fixed jobs to this class of employees, then that hotel establishment is practicing casualization. And where casualization is found to be in existence, the labor officers, the Office of the Labor Commissioner is empowered to direct the employer to change the status of employees And on assessment, if it's found that the employees were denied certain accrued rights arising from that practice of casualization, then the labor office is again empowered to direct the employer to make good of those allowances to the employees. So you can see that legislation is very important, because if the employee is not paid, which is another aspect which is provided for in the Employment Code Act, that come the last day of the month or not later than 5 days after the month, the employee must be paid. Because if the employee is not paid, then the employee becomes demotivated. And when the employee becomes demotivated, then productivity is affected. Now, to ensure that productivity is not affected, the law then provides these requirements, standard requirements, which must apply across all employers. And it is for that reason that the law recognizes the importance of Big Brother to the employees. And this Big Brother are the unions. Unions must speak for and on behalf of their members. Why? Because you cannot afford to have all the workforce every day, every morning. They may not even fit in the conference room. So let them work, but as they are working, their interests must be taken on board by their union representatives, who must reach out to the employer to propose on how best productivity can be attained. And it's for that reason, under the Industrial and Labor Relations Act, that strikes have to be regulated in a manner that there must be engagement between the employer and the union. When that engagement results in a dispute, that dispute must be taken to a conciliator. Why a conciliator? Because you need a referee who just interprets the laws, a referee who is not biased. And if the conciliator fails, or the arbitrator, or whatever name called, then the two parties have two options. They can either bring the matter to Ministry of Labor for, or rather, yes, they can bring the matter to Ministry of Labor so that the Ministry of Labor, through the Labor Commissioner, can conduct a strike ballot. And the law simply states that if the members present, the majority of the members present, vote for a strike, then it shall be. Or alternatively, after the dispute is not settled, the parties can seek redress through the courts of law. However, in terms of essential workers, they don't have the liberty to go through the processes of having to conduct a strike ballot, because you cannot afford, not even for a day, to have those people who are in charge of the water reticulation system to go on strike, those people who are in charge of sewerage, those people who are working in mines. Because if they went on strike, it will be disastrous. The mines, which require dewatering from time to time, will be flooded, and you might not be able to bring that mine back to operation. So in that regard, therefore, the essential service or workers who are engaged in essential services cannot go on strike anyhow. In other words, in order to improve productivity, you then have to appreciate why there must be social dialogue, why parties must go to the table. They disagree, they have to go to the table. They disagree, they have to go to the table. Because if they close shop, if the company ceases to operate, if the wheels of production are halted, then the company might not recover. You can give an example where a company is engaged in the production of cement, 1,000 bags a day, and then they go on strike for 5 days. It means you have lost 5,000 bags. And because you cannot create your own day going forward, where you say, oh, we lost that day, so we have created our own day, it means that you will not recover. And because you will not recover, productivity is affected, and going forward, the company might have a loss to the extent of that work stoppage. So that's why work stoppage is regulated in a manner that has to start from engagement, dispute. Someone comes, there's failure, you go for strike ballot, so that the employer, it will dawn on the employer that, look, if I allow the employees to go as far as having a strike ballot be conducted, then the operations will be affected adversely. So to avoid that, then the employer might decide to agree. It can be a win-win situation. Of course, it has to be where the employer will seek to reach out to the employees to agree to something, and then employees will be motivated. Let's face it, there is no forced labor. Labor has to be remunerated. And that's why you have all these pieces of legislation which regulates employer-employee relationship. And by law, as enunciated by the courts of law, employer-employee relationship is regulated by terms and conditions of service that are contained in a contract. So by definition, there has to be a contract that spells out the level of remuneration, the number of working hours, what happens when you work beyond the normal working hours, which is complemented by the legal framework. So when you go to the law, like I've said, it will tell you, for example, that when an employee is sick, the employee is entitled to sick leave. And if the employee is on a long-term contract, the employee must be paid a full salary for 3 months when the employee is sick. And if the employee continues to be sick for the next 3 months, it will be a half salary. If the employee does not recover after 6 months, then the two parties can seek the opinion of a medical doctor or a team of medical doctors who can then carry out a medical examination. And if it is found that the employee is unable to continue working, then the employee has to be retired on medical grounds. And when the employee is retired on medical grounds, the employee shall be paid a package 3 months basic pay for each year served in terms of the law, or better terms and conditions of service as provided in the contract of employment or in another law or in a collective agreement. So talking about collective agreement, we have seen, for example, in the mining sector, the mines and the unions have agreed to something which is more favorable than what the law provides. So what we are saying, therefore, is the law seeks to provide a platform from which parties can freely engage, from which parties can exchange ideas, from which parties can improve productivity at places of work. And talking about legislation, that's why the Department of Productivity, if I may call it that way, is trying to come up with legislation so that within public service, it should be mandatory that when you are engaging the psychometric tests, must be mandatory so that there is no job mismatch, so that you begin to employ people according to their skills, according to their expertise, according to their professional qualifications, other than just fixing people like you are playing a draft. So you can see that without legislation, it's difficult because other people can be intransigent. They can only listen to themselves, what they think. They cannot accept other people's proposals. So to bring them within level of standards that are acceptable, you then have to have a law that will cite them for that contemptuous behavior. So legislation is important in terms of productivity. So Yvonne, I thought I should talk in that manner. You can come through. Thank you. I can't get you.
Thank you very much, Labour Commissioner. You've
I've
given
lost
us.
you.
Hello? Hello? Are you getting me?
I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. If you're getting me, unfortunately, I can't hear you.
Hello? Are you getting me now?
Nothing, nothing, nothing. Let me try to connect on another gadget. Maybe.
Are you able to get me now?
Nothing.
Get me? Can anyone from the audience give me an indication as to whether...
Hello?
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 Hello, Labour Commissioner? Are you able to get me now? Are you able to get me now? Are you able to get me now? Okay. So, okay. Okay. So thank you very much. The audience is able to get me. I don't know. Labour Commissioner able to get me now? So thank you very much for the very insightful discussion that you've given to us. You have rightly broken down the decent work agenda in terms of the provisions of legislation here in Zambia for protection of workers as well as enterprise. That definitely contributes to productivity. One important issue that I picked out is the role of unions, the role of workers, the role of enterprise in ensuring productivity in a more coordinated manner. And all this is brought to us through different pieces of legislation. The last part, Labour Commissioner, that I wanted us to discuss is the future of the labour market. A lot of issues have emerged on the labour market, among others, the 24-hour economy, the gig economy, the platform workers, the angle drivers, the issues of technology, working from home. So when we look at our legislation and the labor law reforms that we are embarking on as a ministry, are we able to safely say we are on the right trajectory to ensure that we provide for these emerging issues in terms of these future labor market or legislation? How can labor laws, in short, be modernized to accommodate emerging work trends, among them the gig, the platform worker, those who are working on remotely? And what role would the issue of social dialogue play in ensuring that the labor market remains stable and harmonious? You did outline various pieces of legislation that ensure that the labor market remains stable without strikes and people get paid for what they work, and many other aspects that you have brought out. Probably as we come to the conclusion of this discussion, I would like to invite you probably to just tackle this issue that I presented, the issue of the future labor legislation in terms of how it can adapt to these emerging issues on the labor market.
Starting from the youths who are in colleges and universities, higher learning institutions, if you call it loosely that way. There's currently a process of coming up with an apprenticeship act, which seeks to recognize their rights, for example, to pension, to coverage, because even when they are on that apprenticeship with company X, they may be involved in an accident. They are churning out certain assignments within their job descriptions that they are given. So they cannot be secluded from the rest of the employees. So discussions are underway on the funding modalities. Should there be a fund established to meet that aspect, or should it be placed on the employers? Employers are crying that they have so many obligations. So discussions are underway going forward on how best that aspect can be dealt with. You talked about 24-hour economy, and again, only last week, I think Cabinet constituted a committee where ministries were assigned the expected roles, or in other words, what each ministry is expected to do. For example, Ministry of Labor, what aspects should it look at? Obviously, it's aspects of how those employees must be incentivized. Because when you're talking about a 24-hour economy, we'll then now be drifting away from the 8 hours per day. We'll be talking of night shifts. We'll be talking about what kind of incentive those employees must be given. Of course, you have incentives like the night shift differential allowance. Should it be taken? Beyond that, should that component be embedded in the salary permanently? Should it be capturing the hours worked? We are also talking about the transport system. Should there be a 24 transport system, public transport, and where this transport is not available for one reason or the other, because industry can be placed anywhere, we then have to talk about transport allowances to these employees and all that. So Ministry of Home Affairs, how many security officers or the police must be engaged to see to it that employees are secure, street lighting, the council, all those aspects will have to be looked at in terms of the 24-hour economy. When you talk of the platform economy, a gig economy, how do you incentivize someone at home? Obviously, this already started because of COVID. People were operating from home, and there is full recognition from employers that what they're interested in is the output, is the employee able to deliver from wherever location the employee is operating from, and how do you monitor the productivity? So now we are saying incentives must be attached to productivity, and when you look at the minimum wages which were formulated last year, those minimum wages have an aspect of an hourly rate. So if you put in 4 hours, those 4 hours have to be computed in terms of the rate per hour, what have you. So this improves productivity because you're able to know to say, the more I put in, the more I get paid. And when you meet targets, then those targets, there must be incentives. There must be maybe a 13th check. There must be something on top of what the ordinary wages structure is looking. So ordinarily, you are all general workers, you are entitled to that base rate or the basic wage, but over and above, those who put in a lot must equally be paid more than those that have not put in a lot, so that everyone can be motivated to work hard. So going forward, these are conversations that hold firmly to the principle of tripartism. So going forward, government will be engaging the employers more and the employees, so that whatever comes out, whatever direction legislation takes, is a direction that encompasses the views of all the tripartite partners. So that's how it will be structured, and that's how it has been structured, but we'll double the efforts going forward. That's how I'd put it. So we are in good state to embrace the new technologies, the new dimensions, the new practices, best practices, that is to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Labour Commissioner. There's one more question before we wrap up for today. The question says that there's a conflict with the Emoluments Commission Act and the embedded rights of industrial bargaining process. How can this seemingly impasse be avoided? Please shed more light.
Thank you so much. I happen to have been at Ministry of Justice when the issue of Emoluments Commission came up in the Constitution. I was there. And what government was looking at, if I may digress a bit, was or rather since time immemorial, Ministry of Finance used to formulate what was known as a cost circular, which was giving the ceiling to what could be given in terms of the processes of collective bargaining with the unions. Now, that was marked confidential, and the unions did not know actually that these employers, the statutory bodies and the public entities were given that mandate to only negotiate up to a certain level. So they will start from 2% to 3%. So by the time they reach 13%, then there will be that track record of having negotiated, and everyone will feel that they've negotiated. But that's not to say that Ministry of Finance was taking away the free collective bargaining processes. No, it was simply a mandate. Even in private companies, the board gives mandate to management because, one, the recognition agreement is signed between management and the union. The collective agreement is signed by management and the union. So even in government, there is a board. Now, these statutory bodies had different boards which were sitting under their respective acts. But it dawned on government that there was inequality, unfairness. Some boards were rewarding the employees beyond what they were bringing to the table, while some institutions which were performing at that optimal level were not being remunerated according to their efforts. Now, to equalize, because government is a government of fairness, it's a government that ensures there is no discrimination, decided to bring a professional body that will not just be determining the ceilings from nowhere. It has to be traceable to a well-founded research, a survey, and that survey will inform us that this institution is performing up to this level. And because it's performing up to this level, what they deserve is according to their performance. Now, the misconduct, if I may call it that way loosely, which has been happening is that when Emoluments Commission gives those parameters to the board or to the institution, then the institution just takes that to the table to say, unfortunately, we can't negotiate. Emoluments Commission has just said 15%. You can't go that way. The 15% is given to the institution. So the institution must go to the table to go and listen. Then they begin to negotiate until they reach the ceiling. Because in some instances, you will even realize that when Minister of Finance was giving that core circular, sometimes the negotiations would not even reach to the maximum of what was pronounced in that circular. So what is missing, therefore, is the understanding that Emoluments Commission gives mandate. And the Emoluments Commission is a public service institution, while the Industrial and Labor Relations Act is a national law that regulates all employers, public and private. So even the public service employees and employers, or the public sector employers, are subject to regulation by the Industrial and Labor Relations Act. So the issue of the mandate, the issue of the ceiling, it's an in-house thing. But when you come to Ministry of Labor, you have to submit, and they do submit, I can confirm, they do submit the collective agreements for approval of the Ministry of Labor, and for registration by the Labor Commissioner. So the two must not be mixed up. So that law has not affected the operations of Ministry of Labor. Rather, it's as good as a policy that Lumwana mine, I can give them an example, comes up in terms of how they are going to give the mandate. That has nothing to do with Ministry of Labor. We will still have to receive within 14 days after negotiations. They must bring that collective agreement to us. So there is nothing changed. What actually it seeks to do is to be fair to everyone within the public sector. Others were overpaying themselves. Others were poorly paid, even when they were doing a decent job. So what it has brought is a professional analysis, a professional eye, traceable reference of where they're coming from, how they arrived at whatever they have arrived at. Some government, public entities have had no audit reports for over the years. But now, Emoluments Commission are saying, wait, the law requires that 3 months after the financial year, you must produce the audited financial books. We must know your liquidity. We must know how you are faring. We cannot jump the gun and talk of salaries. Let's know how you are faring. If you need to be put on a life support machine, then we'll know we'll restructure. And after we restructure, then we'll begin to operate effective and bring productivity. So there must be, it's about bringing productivity in these state-owned enterprises, in these state institutions. So it has nothing to do with the collective bargaining processes. The collective bargaining processes are still freely and should be freely conducted away from the intentions of government of building capacities, of harmonizing the salary structures, of ensuring that people get paid according to the productivity levels. So that's how I can answer it. So there's no commingling of legislation. It's clear and straightforward. The Emoluments Commission is very clear in their mandate. They are there to give parameters to their institutions. But those institutions are required by law to come to this office and submit what they have negotiated so that it can attain the force of law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Labour Commissioner. It has been a very insightful morning. 1 hour, 5 minutes, full of information and awareness actually on some of these key issues. I see in most cases people will say, Ministry of Labour increase salaries. And when you look at the people that are shouting increase salaries, they actually have a union in place who are supposed to negotiate on behalf of their workers. So you've touched all aspects that hit on productivity, starting from issues of decent work, issues of apprenticeship, issues of future legislation. And for me, you've done justice to the subject. And my role now is just to sincerely thank you and thank the our audience, our participants for this session. And I wish to inform you that this is going to still be on the Productivity Z360 YouTube channel for you to follow through and listen as you endeavor to ensure productivity for your workforce as well as in your various enterprise. All you need to do is to subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button that every time we go live, you are able to participate in this discussion. So thank you very much. Until next month, actually, we are featuring Mizinga Melu. Hopefully, if our schedule will allow, please tune in and join us. Labour Commissioner, thank you very much, and indeed have a blessed day. God bless you and God bless Zambia. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. God bless you too. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.